Well, good morning, good day. As introduced, I'm Clare Reimers from Oregon State University and from the Regional Class Research Vessel Project that's funded by the National Science Foundation. I just want to thank all our hosts for today's workshop and this opportunity to speak about some of the unique workforce concerns of large facilities. As we all know, NSF large facilities are intended to further science, and as we've heard, often through the use of very advanced and sometimes remotely placed specialized equipment. So with that in mind, I thought a good topic would be approaches for creating a trained and motivated user base for these facilities and their data. And I plan to illustrate my points with lessons I've learned as a user of the academic research fleet and as a participant in a consortium of institutions that work to coordinate the utilization of the academic research fleet and to enhance their contributions to oceanographic research. And this consortium is called UNILS, or the University National Oceanographic Laboratory System, as you see a little logo here. And I'm hoping that those of you who are from other large facilities will see parallels to your programs in what I will share with you today. So you heard a little bit about me already, but I made this slide to show you a timeline of my academic history and some of my experiences with the academic research fleet, because I think this colors my perspectives on workforce issues and what I have to present today. So as you heard, I'm an ocean scientist and I've worked in academia my whole career. And I've had a fairly typical uninterrupted career trajectory, learning the ropes of research and teaching and personnel management, mostly by emulating my mentors or by just trial by fire kind of experiences as I went out into the field, and not with really any targeted training. And so my message is that maybe that's not the best way to do things. I've been a user of the academic research fleet since 1977. My first cruise was on the research vessel Wacoma as a graduate student at Oregon State University. Wacoma was an NSF-owned vessel, and it was quite new in 1977. It took me another 10 years before I was in a position to actually lead a research cruise as a chief scientist. So I led my first cruise when I was an assistant research faculty member at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, part of the University of California, San Diego. And then by the time I accepted a tenure track position at Rutgers University in the early 1990s, I started to be active in UNILS. I volunteered to be the institution's, Rutgers institutional rep to UNILS, and then became active in the UNILS sort of governance process, which I'll be describing shortly, active as a council member and then as a chair of what's called the Fleet Improvement Committee, or FIC. When I was FIC chair, we started a program called the Chief Scientist Training Program, which I'm going to describe because I think it's been effective and could be a model for other large facilities as a way to make workforce improvements. So here's my main message in this slide. I think you'll see that I think that large facilities are valuable and they're often unique assets for advancing science and for workforce development. But these goals can only be fully met when the broad science user community understands and contributes to what the facilities offer, how they're managed and funded, how they're accessed and scheduled, the responsibilities of being a user and the risk of being a user, and all the capabilities available to promote collaboration, data sharing, and outreach. And I feel that UNIL has helped us accomplish that for the academic research fleet. And another way of maybe saying my message here is I'm not a believer in build it and they will come. You've got to really help the community understand how to use facilities effectively. So as I've already mentioned, my experience with major research facilities comes from utilization of the academic research fleet. And this slide shows you the fleet's composition today. The academic research fleet is considered distributed infrastructure, and it has facilities that are in operation and under construction. You can see from this list that there are 18 vessels in the academic research fleet currently. 3 of these are owned by the National Science Foundation, 6 are owned by the Navy, others are owned by either institutions or states. They vary in their capabilities. Some are relatively small and intended for more coastal local work, short duration trips, and others are much larger, can travel globally, carry large science parties up to about 40 scientists, and have very advanced capabilities. You can also see that they've been built at different times, and some are nearing the end of their what we call service life, which is usually about 40 to 45 years. And so through UNILs, there is a process where we're continually looking at the fleet and planning for renewal and modernization. And this is, where the RCRV project enters the picture here. It is the latest in efforts to modernize the academic research fleet supported by the National Science Foundation. We're in the process of building 3 new vessels that are sort of intermediate in size. Their names you can see will be the Tani, the Narragansett Dawn, and the Gilbert R. Mason. And again, they will all be in operation by 2025, and some of those older vessels in the previous slide will have been retired. And this is part of the normal process of renewal that's always ongoing in planning for oceanographic research. So next, I thought we could talk a little bit about the research vessel workforce and what it encompasses, because I think this relates to the theme of this workshop. It's important to realize in the kind of day-to-day operations of these, again, distributed facilities, there are kind of 3 main groups. There's the operations management and shore support at the home institution for each vessel. And they're also involved in the scheduling of the vessel. There's the ship's officers and crews, so that includes the captains, the mates, the engineers, the cooks, the able-bodied seamen. And then there's what we call the marine technical support, who look after all the scientific equipment and make sure that it's in good working order for the science parties coming aboard. The marine technicians are also kind of a key interface between the ship's crew and the science parties, making sure there's good communication and that everybody understands the objectives of each new mission. So the real trick in using the academic research fleet is this integration and making it run smoothly, making the scheduling efficient, keeping everybody motivated and happy, and in a way that then the science is successful and the scientific parties go home with what they need, and things keep going. So that's the trick. And so I think UNILS has been very important in making that all happen, and was why it was formed in the first place in the 1970s. So this slide is to tell you a little bit about really what UNILS involves. As I mentioned, it is a consortium of member institutions. Currently there are 59. The whole UNILS concept was established in the 1970s by a commission. UNILS works with the federal agencies and shares a lot of information back and forth as part of their processes. There's a governing council that's an elected body of volunteers that again holds meetings and hears from the community and makes decisions and works again with the federal agencies. There are 9 standing committees. Of course, input to all of this comes from the operators and the technical staff, who are also looking after other facilities besides ships, such as aircraft and submersibles. And then there's an office, a coordinating office, that's funded by the National Science Foundation, and that holds the meetings, shares the information, puts out resources, and is involved in scheduling. So as I mentioned, there are these 9 committees that are part of UNILS, and this is, I think, really critical to the sort of how all the different parties in the research vessel workforce come together, because some of these committees are really a place that's more driven or has input more from those people involved with the facilities. For instance, the Research Vessel Operators Committee or the Technical Enhancement Committee. So again, these committees meet and share lessons learned and best practices across institutions and sort out issues. And then there are other committees that are more science and engineering workforce driven. And so they have members that are more from the science community, or for instance, for the Deep Submergence Science Committee, engineering support for the submersibles and remote operated vehicles that are used from the academic research fleet. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's one committee called the Fleet Improvement Committee, or FIC, which is one of the probably more active committees, and is where both sides of the house come together a lot to make plans for improving the fleet and planning for future acquisitions. And so I was actually chair of the Fleet Improvement Committee from 2009 to 2015. And in that role, as we were having our meetings, there were a number of things that were being reported on that led to a program that I'm about to tell you about called the Chief Scientist Training Program. And this slide just lists some of the things that we were observing at the time. One of the main concerns was there was a decline in ship time requests. So these are the online requests that are made to use the facilities that are linked to research proposals. So fewer scientists were asking to use the facilities. And part of that seemed to be linked to concern that asking for ship time had impacts on proposal success and certainly budget. There were also many researchers who were unfamiliar with what equipment and services ships had to offer, and what they needed to request when they were making a ship time request. And then there was also observations from the operators that some scientists who were leading cruises didn't really understand the duties of leading a cruise and how to interact with the facility and marine technicians, and really the skills of being a leader. And then we also thought that there would be benefits in having more opportunities for particularly early career scientists to acquire samples and become familiar with the fleet in developing their research. So this led to this program that I've mentioned called the Chief Scientist Training Program. And how it came to be was I wrote a proposal to NSF, a rapid proposal in 2011, and proposed this program and took on leading it for the first few years. And what the program did is illustrated with this slide, but we first enlisted some experienced scientists and marine technicians and operators to help us in this goal of training selected participants in all phases of multidisciplinary oceanography. And so then we advertised a selection process, and had applications and chose from those applications, and then hosted a 1.5 day workshop where all the participants came together and we discussed the whole gamut of things, from initial proposal to facility requests, cruise planning, cruise execution, reporting, and problems you can have along the way. And this same group also had been told that they were going to be leading a cruise and were given ship time. Usually it was a 5-day trip. And so from each group, we selected 2 co-leads, and they were responsible for communicating with the whole group and with the operators, and building a team, becoming familiar with the equipment, becoming familiar with where they were going to be operating, the operational environment, setting all the priorities, following rules of safety and appropriate conduct, and reporting on outcomes. So being cruise leaders. And so, again, the initial program, we had 2 cruises. It was then renewed the next year for 2 more. And so those first 4 cruises were on 3 different intermediate vessels. The program was well received, and so other investigators were interested in continuing the program on other vessels, and so NSF continued to support additional versions of the program. So to date, there have been 12 ships that have hosted chief scientist training workshops and cruises. This slide shows you the number of participants, which stands now at 251. You can see there was no, this program did not take place in 2020 because of COVID, and also there aren't any in 2021. So that's unfortunate. But what's also plotted here is the number of ship time requests. So again, those online requests from participants. So after they were involved in the program, did they come back and were they interested in using the facilities? And you can see that there was a growing number in those ship time requests. And the UNIL's office continues to track these requests from trainees who've been involved in the program. So because of being asked to give this talk, and realizing we are coming up on 10 years from the initiation of this program, I thought maybe I would reach out and contact some of the first participants and get maybe more of a 10-year retrospective on how successful this program was and if it was useful in bringing people to use these facilities. So the first, I sent out a questionnaire with the help of the UNIL's office to these 56 participants just last month. And well, actually this month, it's still this month. So far, we've only heard back from 26. But the first question was, since your program participation, have you continued active fieldwork in a discipline of the ocean sciences? And here is the outcome that we received so far. Most are still active in ocean sciences, and about 70% are still actively doing field work. It seems like that some have gone in other directions, but that, I guess, is to be expected. We also asked if participants had gone on subsequent research cruises and how many. And it turned out that 42% had been on 5 or more cruises in the last almost 10 years. 31% on 1 to 4, and 27% had not been on further cruises. And we also asked those who'd been chief scientists, and there were some respondents that said, yes, they'd gone on to lead cruises or were about to. And I've listed here 3 of the vessels where they've had this experience. We also asked about ways that this program contributed to career advancement. And rather than read all the responses, I just want to say that the common thread to the responses was, by being part of a program like this, learning what was required, participants became more confident about using such facilities, that they were qualified to lead a cruise. It was not a mystery how to do it. And they also appreciated the value of meeting experienced scientists and other early career scientists who they could continue to collaborate with. Another question was, having a training cruise experience like this, did that lead to any valuable research or input to publications or a thesis? And most said yes, and they cited publications that have come out since their participation. And I listed here all the journals that where papers were published from those first 4 cruises. So I think that was a pretty good return for NSF's investment in these short cruises. And other responses indicated that maybe there weren't publications, but they got confidence for future proposals, or for work that they would do as a postdoc, or for, again, other upcoming work. And then lastly, one of the questions was just to provide any other retrospective comments. And again, I don't want to read these word for word, but the main message from particularly the early career scientists who took part in this program was that it does take time to be successful with the grant funding process and all the steps that it takes to lead a research cruise and take advantage of these facilities. But they were getting there. and they were thankful for the help that helped them in some of their first proposals. So that was, I guess, again, the program that I wanted to share with the group that I think could be helpful in different forms for other facilities. I know, for instance, the Ocean Observatory Initiative has lots of training workshops for working with their data. With regard to the academic research fleet, data is also a big thing and is evolving more. And there's certainly more an emphasis on cyber infrastructure related to the fleet. And this is where I can credit my colleague Chris Ramsos and his team in the RCRV project, who are developing new tools for working with cruise data and also for cruise planning. So for future scientists, another thing that they're going to have to learn and be trained in is how to take advantage of these new tools for planning a cruise, coordinating it, and sharing data with participants on shore. The new vessels, like the regional class research vessels, have a lot more sensors and corresponding data streams that are, available with quality assurance in real time. And again, there's this capability of sharing data much more broadly with onshore specialists. So this is another new aspect of working in a remote environment, but you're more connected today than you used to be. And just to give a plug for Chris's program, the system they've developed, they call Coriolix. It stands for Cruise Observation and Real-Time Interface for Open Live Information Exchange. We call it in the project data presence system, distinguish it from telepresence, which is more kind of video sharing, whereas this is data sharing in, again, near real time. And the importance of developing more interactive data products as we conduct research from these platforms. And just one last slide about the Coriolix. It is basically a user dashboard, so available to the scientists who are on the ship and also to collaborators on shore. And again, I think it adds a new dimension to what these facilities offer and how we can engage with a diverse workforce. So I guess I'm going to wrap up now. Here was my message from the beginning. I hope I've convinced you that there's benefits for engaging with the science users so that they understand these facilities better and know how to take advantage of them, and work effectively with the operations side of the house. And I guess my concluding remarks are that I think, as a community, a broad, large facilities community, we can't leave it to chance and to privilege that there's access to information about these large facilities. We need to share that quite widely and make some effort to do that. And so during operations, if we can develop programs that invite new users, that's a good thing. It should be part of facility management and workforce development. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions or start discussion, and I'll stop sharing my screen. So